The embossed ivory envelope sat on my polished quartz counter like a venomous snake, coiled and waiting to strike. Even from across my sleek, minimalist penthouse kitchen, a space that felt both like a sanctuary and a monument to my decade of relentless struggle, the sight of my mother Eleanor's perfect, looping script sent a familiar chill down my spine. It was the same hand that had addressed birthday cards filled with platitudes, the same hand that had written cheerful notes while ignoring my increasingly desperate calls years ago. Calls made from payphones and borrowed cell phones because mine had been disconnected. Just shred it, Anya, Chloe advised from the breakfast island, her eyes scanning her tablet, a low hum of focused energy around her. She knew, perhaps better than anyone, what that script represented. You don't owe them anything. Not after everything. Not a single shred of your time, energy, or beautifully expensive stationery. But this one felt different. Heavier, more loaded with insidious intent. I picked it up, the thick cardstock cool under my fingers, the gold-edged weight announcing its perceived importance. My stomach tightened, a familiar knot of dread and anger forming. I had to see what fresh hell awaited inside. I had to know the precise nature of their current delusion. No, I said, my voice quiet but firm. Not this time. This isn't just a birthday card I can toss aside, another silent year added to the decade of their indifference. This feels like a summons. I need to see what kind of mental gymnastics they're attempting now. I broke the seal, a small, satisfying rip. Inside was a single card, as pristine and gold-leafed as the envelope, a formal invitation. My gut clenched, a sense of foreboding washing over me. I unfolded it slowly. The annual Griffith Foundation Charity Gala, I read aloud, my voice flat, devoid of inflection, each word a bitter pill. Honoring Eleanor and Thomas Griffith for their tireless work in philanthropy. I laughed again. A short, sharp, ugly sound that bounced off the high ceilings and expansive windows. A sound that held no humor, only pain and a simmering rage. Philanthropy. The word tasted like ash on my tongue. Chloe looked up fully, her usual cheerful expression replaced with a look of grim understanding and weary sympathy. She knew the story, the whole sordid, ugly truth. Okay, that's rich, she said, shaking her head slowly. Given how they helped you find your way, their version of philanthropy is apparently taking everything from their own daughter. Wait, it gets better, I continued, my eyes scanning the bottom of the invitation, my blood running cold. Held at the Sterling Tower Grand Ballroom. My building, the crown jewel of Anya Reed Developments. The 50-story monument I had poured 10 years of relentless work, sleepless nights, and sheer, bloody determination into creating. The building that stood as proof that I had survived, that I had thrived despite them. They wanted to host their self-congratulatory parade, celebrating their supposed generosity and community service, in a space I owned, built with money I earned, every agonizing step of the way. The audacity was so profound, it felt like a physical blow, a punch to the gut. The memories didn't just flood back, they crashed over me like a rogue wave, pulling me under. Sitting in the sterile, uncomfortable office of the bank manager, who explained, with a look of uncomfortable pity, that the trust fund my grandmother, bless her soul, had meticulously set up for my education and future security was empty. Cleaned out, every last dollar gone. The frantic, unanswered phone calls to my parents, each ring a desperate plea for help, for explanation, for anything. The gut-wrenching discovery of photos on social media. Brett, my golden brother, clinking champagne flutes with Eleanor and Thomas on a gleaming yacht anchored in some impossibly blue water, celebrating the launch of his doomed innovation hub. While I was huddled in a bus stop shelter, the cold wind whipping around me, trying to figure out how to make the night shift at a greasy diner stretch far enough to cover next week's rent for a room barely bigger than a closet. They were sun-drenched and smiling, hashtagging family success proud parents, living their best lives, while I was cold, hungry, and utterly alone. My phone buzzed, vibrating on the counter, pulling me back to the present. An unknown number. But I knew. I recognized the sequence of digits that meant Eleanor was trying to reach me without using a number I'd blocked. I took a deep breath, bracing myself, and put it on speaker. Chloe leaned forward, listening intently. Anya, darling, you received the invitation. Her voice was syrupy sweet, dripping with an artificial warmth that set my teeth on edge, a sound that promised nothing but manipulation. It was the same tone she'd used all those years ago, smoothly explaining away the missing funds as a temporary reallocation for a promising family investment. and urging me to be patient and supportive of Brett's vision. Your father and I are simply over the moon that the gala is being held at your beautiful building. It's simply magnificent. You've been such a success. Funny, I said, my voice deliberately flat, carefully controlling the tremor of anger that threatened to surface, the icy control I had mastered over the past decade holding firm. How my success is suddenly relevant now. For 10 years, after the financial kerfuffle, as you so delicately put it, my calls went straight to voicemail. My emails went unanswered. I ceased to exist in your world. Oh, Anya, past is past, sweetheart. Water under the bridge. Her laugh tinkled, light and dismissive, brushing away a decade of pain as if it were a speck of dust. Family looks forward, not back. Besides, Brett feels simply awful about how things turned out with the venture, truly devastated. Chloe across the counter muffled a snort. She knew Brett Griffith. Awful he got caught, maybe. Awful about the consequences, certainly. But awful about what he'd done, unlikely. Does he? I asked, letting a dangerous edge creep into my tone, testing the waters of her denial. Awful enough to repay the $750,000 he blew on that scam, the money that was supposed to be my seed capital, the money that grandmother, bless her soul, left specifically for my future, the money you signed over without my knowledge or consent. The figure hung in the air, a stark, ugly number that represented not just lost potential, but deliberate, calculated theft, the foundation of my decade of hardship. It wasn't a scam, Anya. Aliner's voice rose sharply, losing some of its practiced smoothness. The mask was beginning to slip. It was a visionary project, a temporary setback, and we didn't blow anything. We made a family decision to support Brett's future. He had such potential. You were always so dramatic about finances, Anya. If you'd just been more understanding, more supportive of your brother's dreams, he wouldn't have faced such difficulties. My laugh was colder this time, sharper, a shard of ice breaking off inside me. Understanding, supportive. I was understanding when you told me the trust fund was inaccessible. I was understanding when you said you couldn't spare anything after Brett's setback. I was understanding while I worked 3 minimum wage jobs, sometimes 80 hours a week, just to keep a roof over my head, while you were posting photos of yourselves sipping wine in Tuscany, wearing designer clothes bought with money you stole from me. What exactly do you understand, Mother? Besides manipulation and hypocrisy. Silence stretched on the line, thick and uncomfortable, punctuated only by the hum of my refrigerator. Then, a weary, theatrical sigh. Anya, please. Your father and I, this gala means so much to us. It's for the foundation. Everyone will be there. All the major donors. The Vanderbilts, the Prestons, the Chengs, all the people who matter. We can't very well tell them our own daughter refused to let us use her building for the foundation's biggest event of the year. It would be embarrassing. It would reflect poorly on the family name. There it was, the core of their being, not love, not remorse, not even obligation, reputation, social standing, the only currency they truly valued. My pain, my ruined future, my decade of struggle, none of that mattered compared to a potential social faux pas. I looked around my penthouse, every polished surface, every piece of art, every breathtaking view of the city lights glittering below. This wasn't a gift. This wasn't inherited. This wasn't given to me. Every single piece of it was earned through relentless effort, every obstacle overcome through sheer force of will, every dollar a testament to my survival and defiance. Built from the ground up, with nothing but my own 2 hands and a burning need to prove them wrong. You know what? I said, a sudden, chilling calm settling over me, a plan forming in the space where pain had once resided. Fine, I'll host your gala. Chloe across the counter looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. Really? She mouthed silently, a question mark in her expression. Aliner's voice perked up instantly, all trace of tension gone, replaced by triumphant relief. Oh, Anya darling, I knew you'd be reasonable. I knew you. I'll host your gala. I cut her off, my voice low and steady, filled with a promise she didn't hear, a promise I intended to keep. And I'll give you the most unforgettable night of your lives. After I hung up, the silence in the kitchen was heavy, broken only by the distant city sounds. Chloe slowly closed her tablet, her expression a mixture of confusion and anticipation. Okay, that was unexpected. Please tell me you have a plan that involves more than just providing canapés and a venue for their ego trip. Because frankly, my urge to key their Mercedes is reaching critical levels. A genuine smile, cold and sharp as a newly sharpened blade, touched my lips. I walked to the secure storage unit built into the floor plan of my office, a reinforced room where I kept sensitive documents and contracts. Inside, neatly organized, were boxes of old financial records, deeds, files detailing every step of my company's growth. But in the back, tucked away, was a simple, worn cardboard box. It contained the physical remnants of my past. My grandmother's dog-eared copy of The Intelligent Investor, a faded photograph of us together laughing in her garden, and a small, locked metal box. This metal box, heavy and plain, held the carefully compiled evidence of a decade of lies, neglect, and theft. They want a celebration of the Griffith legacy, I said, the cold metal cool under my fingertips. They want to put themselves on display. Then let's give them the full, unedited director's cut. Live, in high definition, for all their important friends to see. Chloe's expression shifted from concern to one of keen, almost gleeful interest. Okay, she said, her eyes sparkling with a familiar mischievous light. Now that's the Anya I know. The one who doesn't just survive, she builds an empire and then drops it on the heads of her enemies. Tell me everything. I want in. Revenge, they say, is a dish best served cold. I preferred mine meticulously planned, flawlessly executed, and served with a side of devastating public humiliation. The first call I made wasn't to an event planner, but to Leo Vance, a videographer I'd worked with before on marketing campaigns for my developments. He had a reputation for being discreet, highly skilled, and having a sharp, almost artistic eye for capturing uncomfortable truths. More importantly, he owed me a favor for a timely payment on a massive project they'd tried to stiff him on. Leo, I said, getting straight to the point. I need you for a very special family event. It's a tribute, of sorts. A documentary premiere disguised as a high society gala. A night where the truth finally gets its moment in the spotlight. He paused on the other end, intrigued. Intriguing. What kind of tribute? The kind that rewrites history, I replied. The kind that exposes a decade of lies and betrayal. Consider me booked, he said without hesitation. What's the budget? Let's just say, I told him, looking at the metal box on my desk, the physical weight of the past in my hands, whatever it takes to ensure the story is told correctly. Every single detail. No expenses spared. We started planning immediately, working in secret. The foundation had its own event planners handling the standard logistics, catering, music, seating charts, but I insisted on overseeing every detail related to the venue, ostensibly for quality control at my building. The standard high society trappings were all there. The renowned caterer, the live jazz trio, the elegant floral arrangements. But hidden within the seemingly innocuous details were subtle, carefully placed triggers, layers of passive-aggressive symbolism. The lilies in the centerpieces, stunning white blooms meant to convey purity and celebration, were subtly interwoven with wilted, browning flowers. A visual metaphor for decay hidden beneath beauty, for the rot at the core of the Griffith family. The custom-printed programs, on exquisite linen paper with gilded edges, looked utterly luxurious. But if you looked closely, if you held them just right in the light, there was a barely perceptible watermark on the back. A reduced image of a redacted court filing from one of Brett's failed ventures, a ghost of the legal mess he'd created. Chloe, bless her digital wizardry and boundless enthusiasm for righteous vengeance, handled the technical side with ruthless efficiency. She organized the mountain of evidence I'd collected over the years. Scanned bank statements detailing the massive transfers from my trust fund, all $750,000 of it, routed directly to Griffith Ventures LLC. Screenshots of emails where my parents dismissed my increasingly desperate pleas for help with chillingly casual indifference. News articles detailing the spectacular collapse of Brett's innovation hub, the unpaid contractors, the angry investor lawsuits. Social media posts of Alina and Thomas living it up. Cruises through the Mediterranean, ski trips in Aspen, lavish parties in the Hamptons. During the exact periods, I was working multiple minimum wage jobs, living on instant noodles and Chloe's endless supply of moral support, and rebuilding my life from the ground up. This is damning, Anya, Leo said, his face grim but impressed as he reviewed the meticulously edited montage on his laptop in my office. Clips seamlessly transitioned from official bank documents to vacation photos, from news headlines to my desperate emails. I mean, I've seen some shady stuff documenting corporate fraud, but this level of personal, calculated cruelty, they really just took it all. Every last cent of the $750,000. I confirmed, my voice tight with suppressed emotion. The number still had the power to make my stomach clench. A raw wound reopened. I opened a desk drawer and pulled out a single, faded pay stub from the diner, the paper thin and worn. This was from a 16-hour shift. I earned $72.50 before taxes. Enough for a couple of bus fares and maybe one decent meal that week. While they were posting pictures of wine tasting in Tuscany, laughing about the pesky details of Brett's funding, Chloe reached over and squeezed my arm, her presence a silent anchor. I remember those nights. You'd crash on my sofa, exhausted, covered in grease from the diner, smelling like stale fries. But you'd still be up at 5 a.m., hunched over your laptop, taking online real estate courses, sketching building designs until your eyes were red-rimmed and you could barely see. Had to, I said, straightening my blazer, pushing the wave of painful nostalgia away, focusing on the cold, hard present. No one else was going to build my future. They certainly weren't interested in helping. We worked late into the night, every night leading up to the gala, perfecting every detail of the plan. Leo mapped out camera angles with the precision of a military strategist, not just for the main stage presentations, but for discreetly placed cameras throughout the ballroom, cleverly hidden within the decor. These were positioned to capture every reaction: shock, anger, denial, dawning horror, from key family members and prominent guests when the truth hit. Chloe finalized the data on the encrypted USB drives. We ordered hundreds of custom-made gift bags, elegant and understated, ostensibly for gala favors, but meant to serve as silent messengers, distributing the unedited truth to every influential guest in attendance. As the sun dipped below the horizon on the night of the gala, painting the sky in breathtaking hues of orange and purple visible through the towering, floor-to-ceiling windows of the grand ballroom, I stood alone for a moment, looking out at the sprawling, glittering city below. The ballroom itself gleamed, ready for the hundreds of influential guests who would soon arrive, ready to witness the unraveling of the perfect Griffith facade. "Second thoughts?" Chloe asked quietly, appearing beside me, her gaze following mine out the window. I closed my eyes for a brief second, letting the sounds of the city wash over me. I saw again the empty bank account, the unanswered calls, the triumphant, oblivious smiles on that yacht. I felt the cold rain on my face as I stood outside their house after they changed the locks, effectively locking me out of their lives as well as my childhood home. "No," I said, opening my eyes, my voice steady and resolute, hardened by a decade of resilience. "They chose their golden boy and their precious reputation over me a long, long time ago. They built their gilded cage on the ruins of my future. Tonight, they get to see the golden consequences of that choice. Consequences they never believed would find them." The Sterling Tower Grand Ballroom buzzed with the energy of $100 million of net worth and influence packed into one room. The live jazz trio played a sophisticated melody that seemed to mock the tension simmering beneath my calm exterior. Guests in their finest attire, designer gowns, tailored suits, glittering jewels mingled, a constellation of the city's elite. Politicians, captains of industry, socialites, heads of prominent charitable foundations. Anya Reed, the owner of the building, the architect of this entire evening, played the role of the gracious, successful hostess with flawless precision, moving through the crowd with a fixed, polite smile that felt alien on my face, a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Anya, darling, the building is simply spectacular tonight," Alina exclaimed, air-kissing my cheeks, leaving faint traces of expensive perfume. Her diamond earrings caught the light, sparkling like chips of ice. "The ambience is perfect, though perhaps these flowers are a touch aggressive." She gestured to a centerpiece with its carefully placed wilting lilies, a flicker of vague disapproval on her face. She noticed the lilies, but not the meaning. Before I could formulate a response that wouldn't violate the terms of my carefully constructed plan, my father, Thomas, clasped my arm and gave me a brief, stiff hug. His smile was strained, his eyes darting around the room. "Anya, you've truly outdone yourself. A magnificent space. Absolutely first class. Always knew you had this drive in you, this ambition." "Did you?" My smile remained in place, but a coldness settled over the conversation, an invisible wall rising between us. "Funny, I don't recall that vote of confidence when I was working 3 jobs just to make rent, or when I was applying for student loans the hard way because my trust fund was mysteriously empty." He chuckled nervously. a brittle sound that held no humor, and quickly excused himself, mumbling something about greeting guests, and drifted towards the open bar like a ship seeking safe harbor from an impending storm. Anya, still running this massive enterprise all by yourself? A familiar, saccharine voice cut through the polite murmur. Brittany Sterling, daughter of the building's namesake family, looking polished and undeniably privileged, her face a little tighter, a little more artificial than the last time I'd seen her years ago. Such a shame you never settled down, found someone to share all this with. It must be lonely at the top. Brittany, I replied smoothly, meeting her gaze directly, letting a hint of steel enter my voice. Still relying entirely on the family name and inherited wealth, I see. Some of us prefer building our own empires from scratch. It's less complicated, less dependent on the actions of others. Her carefully constructed smile faltered, a faint flush rising on her cheeks. She knew my story, or at least the public version my parents had likely spun. Speaking of building, I continued, changing the subject but steering it precisely where I wanted it to go. I hear your brother is here tonight. Still pitching those groundbreaking ideas. Brett is circulating, yes, she said, regaining a sliver of her composure, eager to shift the focus. He's discussing his exciting new clean energy venture with some potential investors. It's very promising. He's doing wonderful things. I spotted Brett across the room, holding court near a group of older, distinguished-looking men in expensive suits. He was gesturing animatedly, his face lit with that familiar, desperate energy, the glint of a con artist masked by practiced charm. He looked a little older, the lines of stress around his eyes more pronounced, but the core was the same. "Excuse me," I said, my professional smile still firmly in place. "Duty calls. I should greet the guest of honor's son. Wouldn't want to be rude." I approached just as he was wrapping up his pitch, his voice carrying slightly above the music. "And with our proprietary blockchain integration and strategic global partnerships, we're looking at truly revolutionary returns in the sustainable tech sector. It's a ground floor opportunity you won't want to miss. Limited availability for key investors." "Brett," I interrupted smoothly, stepping into the circle of potential investors, extending a hand. "Still innovating, I see. Impressive." He turned, his eyes widening slightly in surprise, recognition flashing across his face before he plastered on a practiced grin. "Anya, sis, glad you could make it. Thought you might be busy with host duties." He clasped my hand, a little too tightly. "Just telling these gentlemen about my latest venture. Actually, given your considerable success in development, perhaps you could lend some insight. Maybe even invest." He winked, a crude, dismissive gesture, as if inviting me into a conspiratorial alliance, as if the past decade of calculated neglect and financial ruin had never happened, as if he hadn't stolen my future to fund his scams. "Oh honey," I said, my voice dripping with false sympathy, patting his arm lightly, my touch cool and deliberate. "I learned my lesson about investing in family ventures the hard way. Cost me my entire inheritance, remember. All $750,000. Hard lesson, that one. Took me 10 years to recover from your temporary setback, Brett. But I'm sure these fine gentlemen," I turned to the group of investors, my smile unwavering, my gaze direct, "would love to hear about your last clean energy project. The one that resulted in multiple lawsuits from unpaid contractors, disgruntled employees, and an SEC investigation into securities fraud. Fascinating case study in visionary finance, really." The men exchanged uneasy glances, murmurs starting among them. Their expressions shifted from polite interest to open suspicion. They began to disperse, shaking their heads politely, making their excuses. Brett's smile vanished, replaced by a look of cold fury. "You always were jealous of my vision, Anya," he hissed once they were gone, his voice low and venomous, his face tight with barely contained rage. His breath smelled faintly of alcohol and desperation. "Vision?" I laughed again, a low, humorless sound that seemed to echo with bitter amusement in the vast ballroom. "Is that what we're calling reckless gambling, substance abuse, financial fraud, and ruining everyone who trusts you now?" Just then, Leo appeared beside us, camera in hand, looking utterly professional, blending seamlessly into the background. "Mind if I get some footage of the siblings together for the tribute video? Just talking about growing up, some warm family moments for the montage." "Of course not," I said, pulling Brett into a seemingly affectionate pose, my arm around his shoulders. He stiffened instantly, rigid with apprehension, a deer caught in the headlights. We have so many cherished memories to share. Perfect, Leo said, focusing the camera, the lens a cool, objective eye. Maybe tell me about the good old days. Any funny stories, childhood anecdotes. Oh, Brett was always the star, I said brightly, looking right into the lens, projecting an image of sisterly fondness that was a carefully constructed lie. The golden child. Remember that time you needed a substantial amount of money, $500,000, I believe, last minute for operational costs right before that little business trip to the Bahamas. Such an important conference, wasn't it? Brett's grip on my arm tightened painfully, his knuckles turning white. His eyes darted nervously towards our parents across the room. That's ancient history, Anya. Why bring that up now? Is it? I smiled, tilting my head, maintaining the saccharine facade for Leo's camera. Funny how some investments never quite mature, isn't it? Some debts never seem to get old, no matter how much time passes. Just then, Aliner's voice rang out, amplified slightly over the music, drawing everyone's attention. She stood near the main entrance, beaming. Everyone, Thomas is giving exclusive tour of the stunning upper floors of Anya's building. A true testament to modern design. Please join him. I excused myself from a fuming, trapped Brett and followed the tour group, staying just out of sight, melting into the edges of the crowd. Leo trailed behind, camera subtly rolling, capturing the scene, his presence unnoticed by most. And of course, we always encouraged Anya's entrepreneurial spirit, Father was saying to a small group of influential guests as they admired the breathtaking city view from the upper floors. He puffed out his chest, radiating an air of proud parental accomplishment, the architect of his daughter's success. Believed in investing in our children's futures, giving them a solid start in life. The lie was so blatant, so breathtaking in its audacity, it made my blood boil. A distinguished-looking guest commented warmly, "Your children are both such remarkable successes, Thomas and Aliner. You must be immensely proud." "Oh, absolutely," Aliner chimed in, joining the group, her smile radiant and utterly fake, a carefully constructed mask of maternal pride. Though Anya was always so independent, you see. Headstrong, wouldn't take much help from us, preferred to do things her own way. Not like Brett, who understood the importance of family support. Always leaned on us, trusted our judgment. A true family man. Chloe appeared silently at my elbow, holding 2 glasses of chilled water, offering one to me. Her eyes held a mixture of shared anger and unwavering support. "Need one." "Need about 10, I muttered, taking the glass, my hand trembling slightly. The cool water felt good, grounding me in the rising tide of my fury. They're rewriting history right in front of them. Just bold-faced lying about everything. Taking credit for something they actively tried to prevent. Not for long, she said, nodding subtly towards Leo, who was expertly blending into the background. Camera capturing every word, every proud gesture, every false smile, archiving their lies for posterity. The party continued, a glittering, elaborate stage play of family unity, success, and philanthropic virtue. I played my part perfectly, the accomplished daughter, the gracious hostess, the living embodiment of their supposed tough love success story. I circulated, accepted compliments on the building, made polite conversation, deflected awkward questions about my family. And I listened. I listened for the cracks in the facade, the carefully phrased omissions, the subtle distortions of truth that were sprinkled throughout their conversations. Then I overheard it. Aliner, speaking in a stage whisper to a small group of society matrons near a velvet rope marking off a VIP area. She held a champagne flute, her rings flashing in the light. "Honestly, we worried about Anya for years. After the little financial kerfuffle, she became so angry, so difficult, so dramatic about that trust fund situation when we were only trying to help both our children equally, you see. Supporting Brett's vision was simply the responsible family decision at the time, a necessary reallocation of assets. But look at her now. All she needed was a little push, a little adversity. It built character. Sometimes tough love, a little pressure, is the best fertilizer for success. She wouldn't be where she is today without that experience." My grip on my water glass tightened until I heard a faint crack of plastic. Water spilled onto the polished marble floor. "Shit," Chloe muttered, quickly grabbing napkins from a nearby table to help me clean up the mess. She saw the expression on my face. "You okay?" A small cut on my hand stung where the plastic had broken. A single drop of blood, dark and stark against the pristine white marble. Good, I said, looking at the stain, a grim satisfaction settling over me. Let it stain. Let something real mar this perfect, fake party. Let their precious marble be stained with the consequences of their actions. Almost time, Leo murmured, passing by me, his eyes meeting mine, patting his camera bag meaningfully. The signal. I looked around the grand ballroom, now filled with people who had been part of the world that had watched me fall and never offered a hand up, who had believed every carefully crafted lie my parents told about my supposed difficulty, or selfishness, or dramatic nature, who were now consuming my food and drink, admiring my building, while swallowing the fiction that my success was somehow a testament to my parents' character, their guidance, their tough love. Ladies and gentlemen, Thomas's voice boomed over the sound system, drawing everyone's attention. He stood next to the large screen, beaming, ready to unveil their tribute. If you'll make your way to the main seating area, we have a special video presentation prepared. A tribute to family, legacy, and the future of the Griffith Foundation. A celebration of all we've built together. I caught Chloe's eye across the room. She gave me a small, fierce nod. Showtime. The grand ballroom seating area filled with anticipation as guests found their seats, a sea of expectant faces. Leo stood by the massive screen and projection system, giving me a subtle, almost imperceptible thumbs up. Everything was in place. The stage was set. Before we begin our tribute video, Eleanor announced, stepping onto the small stage, looking radiant and utterly too pleased with herself, microphone in hand. She radiated an aura of effortless confidence, the kind that only comes from a lifetime of privilege and never facing consequences. I'd like to say a few words about the importance of family, unity, and giving back to the community. The Griffith Foundation is a testament to these values. Chloe, from her seat near the front, directly in view of one of Leo's hidden cameras, rolled her eyes so hard I was surprised they didn't pop out. Thomas and I have been blessed with two wonderful children, Eleanor continued, her voice thick with practiced emotion, a performance worthy of an Oscar nomination. Through all of life's ups and downs, its joys and its challenges, we've always put family first, supporting each other unconditionally. That is the bedrock of our family. Unity. Brett, seated next to her, smirked, preening, basking in the reflected glory, completely unaware of the cliff edge he was standing on. Even when times were tough, her gaze swept the room dramatically, landing on me for a brief, dismissive moment, a subtle nod to my supposed difficult years. We made sacrifices for each other. That's what real family does. Sacrifice. Sacrifices. I couldn't help myself. The word hung in the air, a challenge, a truth twisted into a lie. I stepped forward from the side of the stage, drawing every eye in the room, a silent, imposing figure against the glittering backdrop. Would you care to elaborate on those sacrifices, Mother? Specifically, the financial ones. Eleanor froze, her smile faltering, her eyes narrowing slightly. A flicker of annoyance crossed her face, quickly masked by a practiced expression of maternal patience. Well, yes, darling, she recovered quickly, her voice just a touch too sweet. Like when we helped you find your independence, encouraged you to stand on your own 2 feet, believed in your ability to overcome challenges. A few polite, bewildered chuckles rippled through the crowd, clearly unsure what they were witnessing. I walked deliberately to the center of the stage, taking the microphone from its stand, my grip firm. Finding my independence is certainly an interesting, and shall we say, creative way to phrase it. I turned to the audience, my voice clear and resonant, cutting through the uncomfortable silence, demanding their attention. Since we're discussing family history, legacies, and exactly how I came to build this magnificent building where we are all gathered tonight, this symbol of my independence, perhaps we should just show the video now. It tells a rather complete story, a story of foundations, and what they're truly built on. Wait, Brett shouted, jumping to his feet, his face pale, his eyes wide with sudden apprehension. He sensed, perhaps for the first time, that something was terribly wrong. I thought I was giving my speech about the Foundation's future projects first, the sustainable initiative. Oh, you'll have your moment, brother, I promised, my smile sharp, my eyes meeting his across the room. Trust me, everyone here will hear all about your projects. Every last, glorious, bankrupt detail. Leo dimmed the house lights. A hush fell over the ballroom, a collective holding of breath. The massive screen flickered to life, momentarily blinding us with its brightness before settling on the first image. One moment, I addressed the hushed, expectant crowd, my voice calm and steady. Before the main tribute to the Griffith Foundation's supposed generosity and the celebration of their 50 years of marriage, there seems to be some lingering confusion about how Anya Reid developments came to be and exactly how my family supported my journey to success. A few guests seemed genuinely curious. I turned to my parents, who were now sitting stiffly in their seats, their smiles gone, their bodies rigid with nervous apprehension. Mother, father, since you were just speaking about helping me find my independence, would you like to clarify for everyone precisely how you helped me get my start? Perhaps mentioning the trust fund my grandmother, bless her soul, meticulously left specifically for my education and future business ventures. Father, perhaps out of ingrained habit, perhaps out of sheer, stubborn denial, puffed out his chest slightly, clinging to the last vestige of his dignity. Well, as I was just telling some guests, he said, his voice a little too loud, a little too confident, we always encouraged Anya's ambitions, provided guidance, believed in her. Really? I turned back to the audience, my voice laced with disbelief with an edge of steel. Because my memory is a little different, I gestured to Leo in the projection booth. Leo, could you play the clip from earlier? Just a little corroboration. The screen showed Father from just an hour ago, talking to the guests in the upper lobby, his voice booming with false pride. And of course, we always encouraged Anya's entrepreneurial spirit. We helped Anya get her start, always believed in investing in our children's futures, giving them a solid start. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. Guests exchanged uneasy glances. The discrepancy was blatant. Interesting, I said, pacing slowly across the stage, letting the implications sink in, letting the silence build. Based on that, you might be under the impression that my parents provided significant financial support for my ventures, perhaps even through that trust fund my grandmother left specifically for me, a fund containing $750,000. I paused, my gaze sweeping over the silent, captivated audience, finally landing on my parents, their faces frozen in masks of dawning horror. Would anyone like to guess? I asked, my voice dropping slightly but carrying clearly through the sudden stillness. How much of that $750,000 trust fund actually went to me? The exact dollar amount. Eleanor stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly on the marble floor, knocking over a small side table with a crash. Her face was ashen, her eyes wide with unrestrained panic. Anya, for heaven's sake, this isn't the time for this. This is a celebration. Actually, Mother, I cut her off, my voice ringing through the stunned ballroom, filled with the culmination of a decade of pain and planning. It is exactly the time. I turned back to the guests, my face a mask of grim determination, of cold, hard truth. The amount was $0. Murmurs erupted, a wave of shocked whispers spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Not only did they not invest a single penny in my future, I continued, my voice rising, carrying over the sudden noise, demanding to be heard. They stole every last cent of my inheritance. $750,000, money left specifically for me by my grandmother, meant for my education, my security, my future. They stole it and gave it to my brother, Brett Griffith, to fund his ill-conceived and ultimately fraudulent innovation hub. That's a lie, Brett roared, jumping to his feet in the audience, his face contorted with rage and fear, sweat beading on his forehead. She's lying, it wasn't a scam, it was a temporary setback. Is it, Leo? I called out, my eyes fixed on my brother, on the man who had benefited from my ruin. The trust fund statements, please, and the transfer records. Let the documents speak for themselves. Documents filled the screen, irrefutable proof laid bare. Grandmother's will, crisp and clear, specifying the trust for Anya Reid. Scanned bank statements detailing the massive withdrawals from my trust fund, dated 10 years ago. Wire transfer confirmations routing the entire sum directly to Griffith Ventures LLC, the name of Brett's spectacularly failed company. The evidence was undeniable. Turn this off immediately, Eleanor shrieked, her voice raw with fury and desperation, taking a step towards the projection booth, as if she could physically stop the truth from being seen. Why, Mother? I asked, spreading my hands wide, inviting the audience to witness her frantic, pathetic attempt to control a narrative that was slipping irreversibly from her grasp. Isn't this the family unity you wanted to celebrate? The transparency, the legacy. Here's another classic family moment then, a glimpse into the sacrifices you made. The screen shifted, showing screen grabs of social media posts from a public profile. Eleanor and Thomas, laughing, raising glasses, One post tagged from a luxurious beach resort in Hawaii with the caption #Brett's launch proud parents blessed. The timestamps aligned perfectly with scanned bank statements showing my account balance at the time, a pathetic $53 and change. Another image, a screenshot of an email from my landlord threatening eviction. You see, I continued, my voice steady, gaining power as I laid bare their decade of deceit and neglect. While I was working 3 minimum wage jobs, diner waitress, cleaning offices, call center agent, while I was sleeping on friends' couches, living on the edge of homelessness, while I was fighting just to survive, my loving, philanthropic family was financing yacht parties, Hawaiian vacations, ski trips in Aspen, all with money they stole from me. Money meant for my future, money meant for my security. We supported Brett, family helps family, Thomas shouted, his voice cracking, finding his voice at last, though it was weak and trembling. He gripped the arms of his chair, his face ashen. Did you? I looked at Brett, who was sweating profusely, his eyes darting frantically around the room, trapped. Or did you just enable your reckless gambling, your substance abuse issues, your complete lack of business acumen that actually sank your visionary company Brett? The one they kept throwing money at, my money, long after it was clear it was a spectacular failure. A money pit built on lies. A stunned silence fell over the ballroom, heavier and more absolute than before, broken only by the distant sounds of the city filtering through the windows and the faint whir of Leo's cameras. The polite society facade hadn't just cracked, it had been utterly demolished. Hadley Sterling, who had remained near the front, stared, her mouth agape in disbelief, her eyes wide with horror. Anya, father's voice was weak, a desperate plea. We never meant to get caught, I finished for him, my voice laced with the pain of a decade of betrayal, with the cold satisfaction of finally speaking the truth. To have your carefully constructed facade of respectability and philanthropy crumble in front of everyone who matters to you. To face actual consequences for your actions, for once. For the past 10 years, you've lived consequence-free while I've lived with nothing but them. How dare you? Eleanor shrieked, trembling with fury, her face blotchy with unshed tears and smudged mascara. She looked less like a society matriarch and more like a cornered animal. After everything we gave you, the opportunities, the name, the upbringing, you do this. You ruin us. You gave me nothing. My voice broke, a raw, ragged sound that cut through the silence, finally releasing the dam of suppressed emotion. You took everything I had. My future, my security, my faith in my own family. $750,000. Money that was rightfully mine. And then you abandoned me when I needed you most, when I was at my lowest point, homeless and terrified. The screen continued to cycle through the evidence, a relentless barrage of truth. Unanswered emails begging for help, damning voicemails of them making excuses, news articles detailing the collapse of Brett's company and the subsequent lawsuits, juxtaposed with social media posts of their increasingly lavish lifestyle, oblivious and uncaring, while I fought to survive and then to thrive. But you're right about one thing, Mother, I said, finally regaining my composure, the raw emotions settling into a cold, hard resolve. I lifted the cracked water glass in my hand, the small cut on my palm stinging. Family does make sacrifices. I sacrificed my trust, my inheritance, and 10 grueling years of my life learning that lesson. Learning that the people who were supposed to love and protect me were capable of calculated cruelty and theft. I looked out at the horrified faces in the crowd, their shock slowly turning to judgment, to disgust. And now, you get to sacrifice your reputation. Every ounce of it right here, right now, in front of everyone you worked so hard to impress. Leo's camera expertly panned across the faces of the guests, capturing their reactions. Eleanor was openly sobbing, a spectacle of mascara and self-pity. Thomas looked utterly defeated, slumped in his chair, appearing to have aged 20 years in minutes. And Brett, my golden brother, was no longer even trying to maintain his composure. He was scrambling towards the nearest service exit, a desperate rat fleeing a sinking ship, hoping to escape the inevitable fallout. Now then, I smiled faintly at the frozen crowd, a chilling calm settling over me, a sense of completion. That was just the preview. The unedited, full-length feature is far more comprehensive, but I believe the point has been made. The screen showed the opening montage of the planned tribute video, seemingly innocent childhood photos, set to soft piano music. Anya and Brett building sandcastles on a beach, family holidays, Christmas mornings. Oh, how precious! Someone whispered faintly before being hushed by a neighbor. Then, the music cut out abruptly, replaced by a jarring, electronic pulse that made people jump. The screen filled with a high-resolution scan of the original trust fund documents, followed by the bank statements showing the massive, unauthorized transfers. The final balance reading $0.00. Just keeping it real, I said, stepping back to the center of the stage, every eye on me, every ear straining to catch my words. Since we're celebrating history and legacies, let's not skip the important parts. The true foundations, shall we say, or in this case, the lack thereof. Email chains populated the screen, my desperate messages from 10 years ago, each one marked read but met with cold silence. Please answer your phone. The bank is asking questions. I don't understand. How could you remortgage without telling me? Mom, Dad, I'm sleeping in my car. Please help, please, I have nowhere to go. Turn it off, you self-righteous bitch. Thomas roared, finally erupting from his chair, his face red with fury, taking a step towards the projection booth. Can't do that, sir, Leo replied calmly, his camera steady, capturing Thomas's outburst for posterity. Professional integrity. The client paid for the full production. The screen split. One side showing the damning financial documents, the other showing that heartbreaking security camera footage from outside my parents' old house. Footage Chloe had painstakingly tracked down from municipal archives. It showed a younger, thinner version of myself, haggard and exhausted, loading what few possessions I could salvage into a beat-up car. It showed my parents' sleek black Mercedes pulling up, them getting out, dressed impeccably, glancing at me briefly without acknowledging me, and walking into their house, the front door closing behind them, effectively locking me out of their lives as well as my childhood home. The contrast was brutal, undeniable. You recorded us. Eleanor shrieked, appalled by the invasion of privacy, utterly oblivious to the far greater violation I had suffered, the violation of trust, the violation of my future. The security cameras did, I replied, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. Amazing what you can access through county archives and a good private investigator when you have the funds. Funds, incidentally, that I had to earn myself, inch by painful inch. Brett, seeing his last chance, made a desperate dash for the nearest exit, shoving past startled guests, muttering apologies under his breath. But Chloe was ready. She stepped into his path, her stance firm, a fierce protective glare in her eyes. Not so fast, Brett. Staying for the credits, buddy. Your full visionary business pitch videos are up next, followed by the investor lawsuits. Sure enough, the screen filled with clips of Brett, younger, more manic, fueled by something other than just ambition, promising investors impossible returns, intercut with charts showing vast sums of money, including my $750,000, vanishing into his spectacularly failed ventures. This is slander, he shouted, trying to push past Chloe who held her ground. Actually, I corrected him, my voice sharp and clear, cutting across his desperate protest. It's public record. Your bankruptcy filing and the multiple investor lawsuits were very detailed, Brett. And as Brittany's mother, a forensic accountant, could tell you, fraud isn't slander. It's a crime. A crime with very real consequences. The footage shifted again. My parents on luxurious cruises, at exclusive spa resorts, funding Brett's endless stream of fresh starts and temporary setbacks. Juxtaposed with high-resolution scans of my minimum wage pay stubs from the diner, from the cleaning company, from the call center. Each post time-stamped, each luxury purchase documented, laid bare alongside the meager amounts I was depositing while trying to survive. The timeline was irrefutable. Their indifference was stark. You're just jealous. Eleanor spat, mascara streaming down her face, her voice thick with tears and rage, clinging to the last vestige of her distorted reality. You always resented Brett's success. You couldn't stand that he was the talented one, the visionary. Success, I laughed, the sound echoing with bitter amusement in the vast, silent ballroom. Brett's success. I gestured to the screen, which now showed surveillance footage from a high-stakes poker room in the Bahamas, Brett agitatedly losing chips. Then, footage of my parents arriving, discreetly passing him stacks of chips, covering his markers with my stolen money. Is that what we're calling reckless gambling, substance abuse issues, blatant financial fraud, and ruining everyone who trusts you now? Is that your definition of success, Mother? My God, Brittany breathed, her face a mask of horror and shock. She wasn't looking at me or Brett. She was looking at Eleanor and Thomas. They're monsters. Now, I smiled faintly, the expression not reaching my eyes. They're not monsters, They're just family, my family. The screen filled with news clippings, local coverage of Brett's company collapse, articles about the investor lawsuits, followed by articles about my own real estate projects years later, about the Sterling Tower development. Not 1 cent, I addressed the crowd again, my voice unwavering, letting the full weight of their betrayal land. That's how much help I got building this life, this building, this success. While they poured my inheritance, my future, my security, all $750,000, into their golden child's failures, enabling his destructive habits, I was learning, working, building. Alone. In the quiet hours between shifts, in cheap motels, in borrowed spaces, I built this myself, brick by painful brick, dollar by hard-earned dollar. We did what we thought was best, Thomas said, his voice barely audible, a pathetic whimper of a man utterly broken. Best for who? Chloe shot back, stepping onto the stage beside me, her eyes blazing with loyal indignation. Best for you. I saw her crying herself to sleep night after night on my couch for months while you were posting online about family values and unconditional support. The final sequence began playing, a brutal, devastating mirror of the opening montage. But instead of happy family photos, it showed the stark, painful reality of the past decade. Empty chairs at holiday dinners I wasn't invited to, ignored birthday cards I'd still sent year after year, screenshots of blocked numbers, years of deliberate silence and calculated neglect, while I fought to survive and then to thrive. Happy anniversary, I said, my voice devoid of warmth, a final, cutting blow. I raised the cracked water glass in my hand, offering a mock toast to my parents, who sat frozen in their seats, faces ashen, utterly destroyed. Here's to family unity. And consequences. Eleanor, finally snapping, surged forward from her chair, her hand raised as if to strike me, blinded by rage and humiliation. But Leo was ready. He moved quickly, stepping between us, camera still rolling, capturing her attempted assault. Easy, ma'am, he said calmly, his voice low but firm. Assault at a public event with multiple witnesses and cameras rolling, that's not a good look. And battery looks even worse in court. You've ruined everything, she shrieked, tears streaming down her face, collapsing back into her chair, a spectacle of mascara and self-pity. You've destroyed us. No, mother, I said softly, my voice filled with a chilling certainty. You did that years ago. You destroyed our family when you chose greed and favoritism over your own daughter. I just made sure everyone saw the footage of the wreckage you left behind. Guests began standing, a wave of uncomfortable movement spreading through the ballroom. They gathered their belongings, their faces a mixture of shock, disgust, and morbid fascination. Some shot disgusted looks at my parents and Brett, who was now trying to sneak out a side door. Others wouldn't meet anyone's eye, simply wanting to escape the toxic fallout. Wait, Brett pleaded, his voice desperate, reaching out towards a group of potential investors who were hurrying towards the exit. My new clean energy proposal is sound. It's a sure thing. Exactly as solid as your last one, Brett, I finished for him, my voice echoing in the suddenly vast, emptying space. But don't worry, I'm sure Mom and Dad will find a way to fund it. That's what real family does right, enabling failure. Thomas sagged in his seat, his face utterly defeated, the man who had once projected such an image of power and success now looking like a deflated balloon. I never thought. We never meant for it to go this far. Funny, I said, walking back towards the screen, which now showed that heartbreaking security camera image of me standing outside my parents' house 10 years ago, alone and abandoned in the rain. That's exactly what I thought when I learned my trust fund was empty, and when you changed the locks. The ballroom was rapidly emptying, the sounds of hurried footsteps echoing on the marble. Only my parents, Brett blocked at the exit by Chloe, Leo with his camera, and a stunned Brittany remained. Well, I smiled faintly at my trembling mother, the smile not reaching my eyes. I think that's enough family history for one night, don't you? I turned to Leo. Get everything. Every second, he confirmed, patting his camera, including all the reactions. And the attempted assault. Perfect? I turned back to my family, my voice cold and devoid of emotion. The exits are clearly marked. Try not to borrow any silverware on your way out. Old habits, I know. The chaos of the aftermath was exactly as I had anticipated, perhaps even more dramatic. Guests scattered like startled birds, their expensive shoes clicking urgently across the marble floor. Some paused only to grab a gift bag, which now served as a physical reminder, containing a USB drive of the full video presentation. Their faces as they took the bag were a study in awkwardness and thinly veiled glee. "You've destroyed us," Alina shrieked, her face a mask of mascara, tears, and pure, unadulterated rage. "Is this what you wanted, to destroy your own family, after everything we did for you?" "Destroyed," I laughed, the sound hollow in the cavernous space, utterly devoid of humor. "No, mother. I just revealed what you already broke. You destroyed our family years ago when you chose greed and favoritism over your own daughter. I just made sure everyone saw the footage of the wreckage you left behind." Brett, finally breaking free from Chloe's subtle blockade, charged towards me, his face contorted with fury and desperation. "You self-righteous bitch. I had investors lined up tonight. You ruined everything." Chloe stepped smoothly between us, her stance firm, a fierce protective glare in her eyes. "Back off, Brett. The only thing you had lined up was another scam. Go cry to your parents, since you're still leeching off them." "It wasn't a scam." He turned to his parents, pleading, tears in his eyes. Tell her my business is legitimate this time. Tell her I can make it work." Thomas couldn't meet his gaze. He just sat there, slumped in his chair, staring at his hands, a man utterly broken, looking smaller and older than I'd ever seen him. Eleanor was still sobbing, clutching her chest. "Oh my God," Brittany's voice cut through the tension, her eyes wide as she scrolled through her phone. "It's already everywhere. Someone live-streamed the whole thing. It's going viral." "What?" Eleanor shrieked, grabbing her own phone, fingers trembling, scrolling frantically. "No, no, no. Karma works fast in the digital age, doesn't it?" I smiled, a genuine smile this time, fueled by a sense of righteous justice. "Especially when you provide such compelling video evidence." I turned to Leo. "Leo, make sure you're getting this too. Their reactions to the livestream going viral. It's part of the story now." "You can't film this," Brett roared, lunging for Leo's camera, a desperate, flailing move. He stumbled over a discarded champagne flute, his hands flailing, knocking over a tall display stand of champagne flutes. Crystal shattered everywhere, a cascade of breaking glass. A perfect, chaotic metaphor for the evening for their lives. "Actually, I can," Leo replied calmly, his camera steady, capturing the destruction. "Your sister had everyone sign media releases at the door, standard event practice." "You did read what you signed, right, Brett?" Brett's face, already pale with fear and rage, went utterly white. "You planned this," he whispered, finally understanding the depth of it all. "All of it. For 10 years. For 10 years, I confirmed, my voice quiet but carrying absolute certainty. "Every single detail. Though I have to admit, your own actions, your spectacular failures, your blatant financial fraud, your constant attempts to scam people, your parents' endless enabling and oblivious social media trail made compiling the evidence surprisingly straightforward. You practically handed it to me." Eleanor suddenly surged forward again, powered by a final burst of impotent rage, her hand raised, aiming for my face. The sharp sting on my cheek echoed in the nearly empty room, a physical manifestation of her fury. "Feel better?" I asked, touching my cheek, my voice steady, devoid of pain, only cold resolve. "Because that's assault, mother, on camera, in front of witnesses, and I'm pressing charges. Effective immediately." "You wouldn't dare," she gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Try me," I said, my voice hardening. "I learned from the best how to hurt family." "From you." Thomas finally stood, his face a mask of despair, his voice tired and weak. "Enough, Eleanor. Let's go, we need to. We need to figure things out, get lawyers." "Figure things out," I scoffed, a humorless sound. "That's a first. Usually, you just ignore the problem until it goes away, or blame someone else." I looked at him, his eyes wet with self-pity, not remorse for what he had done. "You keep saying you didn't mean for it to go this far. But how far did you think abandoning your daughter would go? How far did you think stealing her future would go? How far did you think lying about it for a decade would go?" "We didn't steal," Eleanor began, her voice rising defensively, clutching at the last threads of her denial. But Brittany, who had been watching the entire scene unfold with wide eyes, surprisingly, cut her off. "Actually, Mrs. Griffith, you absolutely did. My mother's a forensic accountant, remember?" She looked at the trust fund records and the transfers I showed her from the video. "What you did wasn't just cruel, it was blatant financial fraud. Illegal, on paper." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Eleanor's strangled sob. "Fraud," I tasted the word, letting its weight settle over the room. "Well, isn't that interesting? Leo, did you get that confession on camera too? Brittany confirming the fraud?" He nodded, his camera still rolling. Brett, realizing the legal implications of Brittany's statement, grabbed Alina's arm, his own desperation mounting. We need to leave. Now, Before I what, Brett? I stepped closer, my voice quiet but carrying absolute authority. Before I press criminal charges for fraud and theft. Before I sue you all for everything you've got left, every last asset, every last philanthropic dollar. Or before I make sure every single business contact, every potential investor, every friend in your phone sees this footage. You wouldn't, he whispered, his face ashen, scared for the first time in his life. I pulled out my phone and held it up, the screen glowing brightly in the dimming ballroom. I already did. Check your email. His phone immediately began buzzing with a rapid-fire succession of notifications, emails, texts, likely calls. From the look on his face, his investors were not happy. Not at all. Let's go, Thomas said quietly, his shoulders slumped in defeat, pulling Alina towards the door. There's nothing left to say. Oh, there's plenty left to say, I called after them, watching their pathetic retreat, a broken parade of expensive clothing and shattered dignity. A lifetime's worth, actually. But I think the video said it all better than I ever could. They shuffled out, disappearing into the night, leaving behind the wreckage of their reputations. Only Brittany lingered near the exit, watching them go. For what it's worth, she said quietly, her voice small in the vast space, I always knew something was off. The way they talked about you after, it never added up. The story didn't fit. I'm sorry. Thanks, I replied, genuinely surprised by her candor. Though you could have said something sooner. She shrugged, a helpless gesture. Would it have helped back then? Probably not. They're very convincing. After she left, the ballroom was empty save for me, Chloe and Leo. Chloe walked over and hugged me tight, her embrace a warm, solid anchor in the aftermath of the storm. You okay? She asked, her voice soft. I touched the sting on my cheek where Alina had struck me, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the decade of emotional wounds. Better than okay, I said, a sense of lightness spreading through me, a burden lifted. I feel free, lighter than I have in 10 years. Leo lowered his camera, his face thoughtful. That's a wrap, I guess. On the main event, anyway, he hesitated. Want me to edit a highlight reel, for legal purposes? Please, I said, a grim smile touching my lips. Make sure to include Mother's attempted assault. My lawyer will definitely need that. And Brittany confirming the fraud. You're really pressing charges? Chloe asked, pulling back from the hug, looking at me intently. I looked around the empty, damaged ballroom, shattered glass sparkling on the marble floor like scattered jewels. Abandoned gift bags containing the truth. The screen still frozen on that heartbreaking security camera image of me standing outside my parents' house 10 years ago, alone and abandoned in the rain, while they lived their best lives inside. Yes, I said firmly, my voice filled with a quiet resolve. It's time they learned about consequences the hard way, the way they taught me. The next morning, my phone was a symphony of notifications, buzzing incessantly with emails, texts, news alerts, and voicemails. News travels fast, especially when it involves wealthy, prominent families, public humiliation, and irrefutable video evidence going viral on social media. You seen this? Chloe texted, sending a link to a major news site. The headline screamed, Philanthropy facade crumbles, real estate mogul exposes family fraud by $750,000 at gala event. It was clickbait gold. Before I could reply, a call came in. One of my major international business contacts, a shrewd investor from Morocco. Anya, my dear, your brother, Brett Griffith. He just tried to pitch me this absolutely ridiculous clean energy idea. Sent me a prospectus that looked suspiciously similar to a pyramid scheme. He chuckled darkly. Very persistent, until I mentioned seeing a certain, illuminating video that was circulating. Quite a production. I smiled, a genuine one this time. And I trust you informed him of your investment policy. Precisely, he confirmed. I informed him, I do not invest in people who steal from their own sisters, particularly to the tune of $750,000. Nor, I suspect, will any of my associates. His reputation in international finance is, shall we say, adjusted. Permanently. After hanging up, a sense of quiet satisfaction settled over me. I walked to my office and opened the metal box from my storage unit. Underneath the old bank statements and legal documents, I found it grandmother's dog-eared copy of The Intelligent Investor, with a small, handwritten note tucked inside the cover. It read, Anya, never let anyone tell you your truth isn't valid. Never let them silence your voice. Build your own foundation, my girl. You are stronger than they know, stronger than they ever could be. My phone buzzed again. A text from Brittany Sterling. OMG Anya, Brett just got served with papers outside the courthouse. Multiple lawsuits. Someone got it on video, it's already on every news site. I clicked the link she sent. Sure enough, there was Brett, looking utterly defeated and bewildered as a process server handed him a thick envelope. The comments section below the video was brutal, a chorus of public condemnation. Karma's got receipts. Family values TM. Finally facing justice for that scam. Chloe burst through my door moments later. No knock needed, radiating protective fury. Your mother's trying to control the narrative online. She's posting on Facebook, on the Foundation's page, saying you're mentally unstable, that the video was doctored, that you attacked her. Is she now? I said, walking to my laptop and opening it. Leo, you sent my lawyer the multi-angle footage of the assault, the signed media releases from everyone who entered the ballroom, and the raw, unedited video files, right? He replied instantly via text, confirming he had sent everything. Perfect. My lawyer called next, sounding almost amused. They're threatening defamation suits against you, Anya, trying to claim emotional distress from the public humiliation. She sighed. I reminded their counsel that truth is an absolute defense. And frankly, the evidence of their actions is overwhelming. Regarding the trust fund and the transfers, with your grandmother's will and the bank records, it's looking like clear-cut criminal fraud charges are on the table. And Aliner's little performance. Battery charges were filed this morning. The video is, shall we say, indisputable. I walked to my floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the sprawling city I had conquered, the city where I had rebuilt my life. Any response from their lawyer on the fraud charges? They're claiming emotional distress from the public humiliation, she repeated, a note of disbelief in her voice. I laughed, a genuine, clear sound. Funny how that works both ways. 10 years of emotional distress for me, and they claim it after one bad night. Another text from Brittany. Your parents just got formally booted from the country club's membership committee and the hospital charity board. The language in the statements is pretty damning. Something about conduct unbecoming and no longer reflecting community values. The doorbell rang, a courier at the door, a thick manila envelope. Brett's official cease and desist letter and threat of legal action. I took it, the paper feeling thin and meaningless in my hands now. I walked back to my office and added it to the metal box, which had become a growing archive of their downfall. Chloe arrived with takeout from our favorite place and a bottle of wine. We sat in my kitchen, the quiet comfort of our friendship filling the space. You know what's insane, she said, scrolling through her phone. People are sharing their own stories now. Your video is trending under family fraud and unsilence your truth. Hundreds, thousands of people sharing similar accounts of financial abuse, betrayal, manipulation by family members. Maybe some good can come from this mess, I mused, looking out at the city, thinking of all those hidden stories finally seeing the light. Already has, she said, showing me a news article about a surge in reporting for family financial crimes, crediting the viral video with raising awareness. You didn't just get justice for yourself, Anya. You inspired people to speak up. My phone buzzed again, a notification from my calendar. A reminder. Brett's scheduled investor meeting for today. My phone rang again, the caller ID showing father's number. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. What do you want, Thomas? I asked coldly, using his first name, severing the last tie. Anya, please. His voice was thin, desperate, the arrogance completely gone. We need help. We're staying with Brett. In his apartment. It's small, barely livable. Your mother isn't well, the stress, her heart. Sounds like a personal problem, I said, my voice devoid of sympathy. I walked to my security camera monitor and pulled up the feed from an hour ago, showing Aliner, dressed impeccably, walking out of a high-end department store with shopping bags. My cameras show mother shopping at Nordstrom an hour ago. Her health conditions seem to permit retail therapy. Silence from his end. Then, Anya, please, princess, don't call me that. We'll make it right, whatever you want. Just tell us what you want. What I wanted. What I wanted was parents who hadn't stolen $750,000 from me, who hadn't left me to fend for myself. What I wanted was a brother who saw me as a person, not just a potential ATM or a convenient scapegoat. What I wanted was a family who would have answered the phone when their daughter was sleeping in her car, cold and afraid. What I wanted was impossible. But what I'll settle for, I continued, my voice firm, leaving no room for negotiation, is watching you face the consequences you so richly deserve. Every single one. The lawsuits, the criminal investigations, the public shame, the loss of your precious reputation. Every bit of it. I paused, a thought occurring to me. How's that new clean energy project going, by the way, Brett? The one you had scheduled investor calls for today. I heard a choked sound from his end of the line. He hung up. Chloe poured more wine, a silent acknowledgement of the finality of the moment. You okay? She asked again, her eyes full of warmth and pride. More than okay, I said, feeling a profound sense of peace settle over me. I walked to my desk and looked at grandmother's note, now framed on my wall. She knew, I said softly. She always knew they would try to break me, but she knew I wouldn't let them. I looked back at Chloe. Instead, we broke their entire facade, shattered it. My laptop chimed. An email from Leo with the final edited video, the full production. Want to watch? He asked via chat. Post it, I replied instantly, typing the command. All of it, everywhere. Make it available for download. You sure? He wrote back a moment later. It's pretty raw, it's done. I thought of the scared, broken girl standing outside my parents' house 10 years ago, the rain mixing with her tears. I thought of the long, hard road she had traveled, the pain she had endured, the strength she had found. How she had fought her way back, not just surviving, but building an empire from the ashes they had left her. I'm sure, I typed, my fingers steady on the keyboard. Someone else out there needs to see it. Someone else who thinks they're alone, who thinks they're crazy for standing up to family abuse and betrayal. They need to know they're not. Posted, he confirmed minutes later. I raised my glass to grandmother's note on the wall. Here's to unsilenced truth. Chloe clinked her glass against mine, a soft chime in the quiet penthouse. And to karma, served ice cold, with $750,000 in video evidence. The penthouse felt different now. Not empty, but lighter, cleansed of the ghosts of the past. I walked through the vast living area, my heels clicking on the polished quartz and marble that no longer felt tainted by the memory of that insidious envelope. My phone lit up with a final news alert, confirming the ripple effect of the gala. National conversation ignited. Viral family gala video sparks dialogue on financial abuse and betrayal within families. Want to know the best part? Leo showed me his camera screen during our wrap-up meeting later that week. Every time they try to spin this, every time they play the victim, every time they attempt another manipulation, another lie, it's all documented now. It's online forever. Their lies don't work anymore. They never will again, I said firmly, looking out at the city, the monument I had built, a beacon of my resilience. Chloe raised an eyebrow, a hint of a smile on her face. Any regrets? I walked to the window, looking out at the sprawling metropolis below, the city where I had rebuilt myself. Somewhere out there, my parents were facing a future stripped bare of their social masks and false prestige. Brett was learning, the hard way, that actions have consequences that can't be bought or charmed away. And I was finally truly free. Free from their lies, free from their control, free from the weight of the past. Just one regret, I smiled, turning back to my friends, my real family, the people who had stood by me when my own blood had abandoned me. I felt lighter, more at peace than I had in years. That I didn't do this sooner. Now, I said, a genuine, unburdened smile spreading across my face. Who's hungry? I hear there's a great little diner by the highway. Kind of reminds me of where it all started. My treat. Their laughter filled the penthouse, warm and real. And this time the echoes felt exactly right.